I have been doing the carnivore way of eating a little over 6 years. And in that time, it has been a learning curve, and I think I have learned the truth about carnivore. And you may be surprised that my truth, the truth, is it depends. So I can't sit here today and tell you X, Y, and Z will help you recover from ABC, because it depends. It depends on you, it depends on me, it depends on my body, and basically because every body is different. No, I didn't say everybody as in all the people. I said every body as in my body and your body. So what good am I at telling you the truth of carnivore is if it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, even though you see a lot of that on the internet, is that, I'd almost call that crazy carnivore, as my friend Amy Berger calls it, keto without the crazy. I'm going to start doing carnivore without the crazy, because I think that's how I have evolved over the last 6 years. Have I achieved all my goals on this way of eating? No. Am I a whole lot healthier than I was 6 years ago? Yes. Let's talk about some of those issues as we move forward. Number one, there's a lot of trial and error, and then you adjust. I think we have been so indoctrinated, at least in North America, by prescription commercials on television, gurus all over everywhere, fitness magazines. Oh, if you take this one pill, you will look like me. Well, who wants to look like you? But they don't tell you that they spent 10 hours a day, 5 hours a day, 2 hours a day in the gym or on a treadmill or out running or sweating or something. But the pill is the reason they are so healthy. So even with that, it depends. It depends on you. And I imagine if you clicked on this video and you're still with me, that you have some issues that you believe a low-carb, healthy fat way of eating would solve. And I think you're probably right, because I think about 90% of the people in at least North America, maybe the world, maybe it's a little bit lower in the world because there are some fairly metabolically healthy. There are some countries in the world that are more metabolically healthy than North America. So their populations may be a tad lower in the overweight and obese categories, but I'm pretty sure it's well over 80%, at least in America, the United States of America. I hate to use America when I'm on an international platform, because there's Central America, South America, North America. There's the United States of America, then there's Canada and Mexico, all these other Central and South American countries. So it probably, what I'm saying probably applies to those, but I only really know the specifics for North America and the United States. I don't think Canada and the US are that different on our health issues. They have free healthcare. We have overpriced healthcare. But healing is definitely not a one-size-fits-all, and that's kind of where the prescription commercials get it wrong. They show you, you take this pill and you'll cure your diabetes. Well, you won't cure it. You'll be able to live a happy life where you can dance around the circles with your little rainbow colors and still be overweight and be happy. But I kind of doubt that may be true. But no, I'm not going to go down that path. I was going to talk about drug trials, but that's another video somewhere along the line, maybe. But even the influencers like Dr. Westman, the doctors that are on YouTube, they are probably influencers, but they are medical doctors. Dr. Westman, Eric Westman, Dr. Anthony Chafee, MD, that's there. Well, Dr. Westman doesn't have his own channel. He speaks on the Adapt Your Life Academy channel, and I have taken some of their Keto Made Simple courses when I first started this. I met Dr. Chafee and Dr. Westman and many others at Low Carb Denver 2023. That was February of 23, out in Denver, where I also met my good friend from a self-improvement course I was in with Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who is an organizational psychologist, and she was in that class with me and didn't live too far from Denver. and was doing low carb or keto or carnivore or something like that, and joined me at the conference, and it was so fun to get to meet her. But anyway, Dr. Westman is a researcher at Duke University, and he also runs a practice there. Dr. Chafee is a neurological surgeon resident in Perth, Australia, and actually sees patients there. So they have a base to work with that us individual non-medical people don't. But Dr. Westman tells people not to add fat if they want to lose fat. Dr. Chafee says you need about 80% fat in your diet from, well, what they both say is it's from fatty meats, not eating sticks of butter like some influencers say. And there's a lady named Dr. Bright. I think she's an osteopathic physician or a holistic physician, or probably an MD or a OD or something. But she's actually, she used to tell women they needed more fat, which they kind of do for their hormones to work properly. Hormones are fat regulated, I guess is the best way. They need fat to work. So if you're not losing weight, you may need a little more fat. Dr. Chafee definitely says you need a little more fat. Dr. Westman says you get into ketosis and you burn your own fat. So you shouldn't be adding fat because fat that you ingest has to be burned or stored before you can burn stored fat. That's not exactly how he says it, but that's, here again, I'm talking my truth. And what I have learned is that you can't even 100% follow any of the doctors unless you're just blindly following them, which probably won't hurt you, but it may not be the best. And what I found the best for me is to not be 100% strict carnivore. And I haven't even defined carnivore. I think I have another video that I did earlier that basically says, I always said if it had a face or came from something that had a face, it's all right to say. But then the other day I heard Dr. Sean Baker, who is another surgeon. There's a lot of surgeons. Dr. Ovadia, who is a heart surgeon in Florida, also is basically carnivore. And he wrote a book that said, stay off my operating table. So I have learned from, it's kind of like the grocery store method. You don't buy everything when you go grocery shopping. If it's not what you want, you leave it on the shelf. You don't say, oh my God, that's the worst advice I ever heard. That's the worst food I ever ate. You just ignore it, leave it there. If you want it, you put it in your basket. So that's kind of how devising your own way of eating needs to be. I have, at first when I started, I heard that sourdough bread was fermented, and because it's fermented, it has less sugar, which does make sense because the bacteria that ferment the bread, the bacteria that ferment vegetables, generally use the sugar in the plant, in this case wheat, to live, for their energy, and so that's how they ferment the thing. But then you have to think, well, that's in the starter, then you dump a whole bunch of flour in, and of course you do rise it again, so that uses up some of it. And recently I've learned, so I've always eaten a little bit or a lot of sourdough bread along the way. And Dr. Sean O'Mara, who is a lawyer and a doctor and served in the military as a doctor, is big on fermented foods, especially for losing, he runs a clinic in Minnesota for visceral fat and using MRIs to show you how much. And he says the best and maybe the only way to get rid of it is through sprinting. Well, once you hit 60 years old, you're not sprinting up and down the street. So I have sprinted a little bit, but I'd say my visceral fat is a little bit higher than it ought to be. But we got to stick to one thought at a time, or I'll forget what I was saying, or I won't go back to it. I've made this video 2 or 3 times, and I've started down a tangent. When I watch it, I'm like, oh, I never finished that. I went down the rabbit hole. So anyway, that's kind of grandpa style vlogging, but you got to get back to where you started. And so the fermented foods. I do also eat some sauerkraut. For a very brief period, maybe 2 months, I worked for a company called Sheetz, which is with a Z on the end, S-H-E-E-T-Z. It's a regional convenience store, pretty much North Carolina to Pennsylvania, and I think it's in Michigan now. But I always loved them before I worked for them. And they have sauerkraut as an option on their hot dogs, and their hot dogs are, a lot of times they're on 2 for $1. Sometimes they're just $1 a piece, but when they're 2 for $1, I get them and I put onions and sauerkraut. Oh, so onions is another thing I use that's not truly carnivore. It's a plant, of course. Dr. Mabry, who was my PCP in Texas, my carnivore PCP, very smart man, and he has some wonderful videos out there. Dr. Paul Mabry, you can find him online. He considered onion as a spice, and a purist carnivore probably wouldn't add spices, they just use salt. So I do use some spices. In fact, I sent a picture to a friend in my How to Carnivore group in Australia, and she said, oh, you got spices on your hamburger? I'm like, oh, I hadn't even thought about it, but yeah, I do. She eats the lion diet, which is even stricter. That's only ruminant meat, salt, and water. But carnivore, oh, what I was going to say, what I heard Dr. Baker say, and I met him at Low Carb Denver also, is if it's a parent or has a parent, if it could be a parent or had a parent, then it's probably all right to eat, which that would include insects, which I guess are technically part of the animal kingdom. But I'm not a big fan of eating insects, so like I say, it all depends. It depends on your taste. Some people include organ meats on carnivore. I do not. My mother couldn't cook liver without getting nauseous, even though my dad has always loved it. In fact, I've told him to go back to eating it, as he's now 87. And it gives you, but you got to do it in small quantities. And one thing I think, there was a doctor who wrote a book called Carnivore Code, I think, who was a very strict carnivore and did a lot of organ meats. And organ meats are good because they're high in vitamin, but if you do a lot of them, you can get too much of certain fat-soluble vitamins. And he's no longer a carnivore. He's added in some very high fructose items, which that's one thing I've learned on carnivore, is that fructose is almost the devil incarnate. I drank a lot of sugar-sweetened, high fructose corn syrup sweetened sodas before I had the stroke 10 years ago. And I think that and my running, distance running in high school could have contributed to it. Of course, I've cut out both of them. I've even cut out sprinting at this point. But so yes, I've learned a lot. I may not have expressed it very well, other than you kind of have to find your own way, and I have become, I couldn't honestly call myself carnivore Chip when I'm really more carnivore-ish. But this particular doctor that added in fruits and honey and all that now has coined the term animal-based, so I didn't want to call myself animal-based, even though I am that, because then it has the connotations of eating fruit and honey, which I still feel are very unhealthy for you in large quantities. But then we could talk about the everything in moderation, which I'll mention it briefly. That may kill you. But if you're, I have always said, if you're at a birthday party, if you're at a graduation, a wedding, a special event, an anniversary, whatever, a baby shower, it's okay to not eat carnivore. You've done it for decades, it hasn't killed you yet. It's probably not going to kill you if you do it one night a month or one night a quarter or something like that. So you have to figure out your own way in. Like I said, again, how you proceed, it depends. So I'm really making this video to kind of tell you I'm transitioning this channel Oh, and I'm Chip, by the way, carnivore-ish Chip. And I'm going to be talking about carnivore specifically. One question, one answer per video, which is like I tried to do this one, the truth about carnivore. The truth is it depends, and it is not one size fits all, no matter what the YouTube tells you or the internet tells you. So that's probably long enough for today. And I've already changed the name on this channel. I probably need to change the description, but I want you to overcome your metabolic unhealthiness, which is probably medically termed metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance. And we will get into those in upcoming videos. And I hope to be able to upload and publish a video every Tuesday and every Friday. It'll probably be around 3 p.m. Is it 3 p.m. Eastern time? Or, I don't know when it'll be, but sometime on Tuesday or Tuesday and Friday. I'll have to watch one of my early training videos because they said, do it at the time in the Eastern time zone when the California, what's that called? Pacific time zone, they're getting out of school and out of work, because that'll boost your video better. But if you just watch it and like it, that'll boost the video just fine. And if you've got multiple accounts subscribed to my channel, please pick one and then just stick with that one. The algorithm and the artificial intelligence with YouTube has gotten much better, and now I wouldn't call it a penalty, but they're not counting multiple views from the same internet connection. So if you need to watch it more than once, please do, or best would be to watch it halfway, rewind it, watch it again. That'll give me more view time probably than watching it 2 or 3 times. And that frees you up to watch some other people on YouTube that may make sense to you and may not. But then you can ask a question what I think of it. You can do that in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you either by making a video or answering it in the comments. So let me see if I can turn this off from my phone. And thank you for being here. God bless. Let's all do carnivore-ish the way that helps us the most. God bless. Bye-bye.